morning and welcome to WNHH's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make New Haven tick. Darryl Brackeen Jr. helps make New Haven tick. He serves on the New Haven Board of Alders. He represents Ward 26, which covers Upper Westville and then tiny pockets 8 planets away in the solar system. And he's running for re-election. He's in the WNHH studio today to tell us about that. Welcome, Alder Brackeen.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's such an honor and privilege to be here.
Well, it's honor, privilege, or mine. Hey, you sneak into my synagogue because our rabbi every week when someone gives a sermon, he always said it's my honor and privilege to introduce them. And he's done it for 25 years. And he says that if he ever varies the word and if only says honor but not privilege, someone will feel slighted. If you add one more honor, privilege, and joy. Hey, you didn't mention joy for that guy?
Yeah, I may have been there quite a few times.
Yeah. I thought you might have been like taking notes on the guy. Anyway, so if you have any questions for Darryl and you're watching on Facebook, you can pop it up there. I want to thank Birch and Moses PC and Gateway Community College for providing support for today's program. Darryl, welcome. It's so nice to have you on.
Yeah, this is great. Awesome.
You're running for re-election as a Democrat. You're the endorsed Democratic candidate. You did not face a primary. You do have a general election with a young man who's been busy on election years. Joshua Van Hosen moved to your part of town.
Great.
And so tell me why you're running again.
Yeah, well, running for the 4th term. And to be quite honest, it's been the call of the community. Mm-hmm. Ever since day one, I actually, New Haven Independent covered me 2011. Skinny kid, just coming fresh from Fairfield University, back to the neighborhood I grew up in. Did a traditional neighborhood survey, which I conduct every year. And based on feedback and conversations throughout the community, that's how I make my decision to run. And the community feels like I've been a strong, authentic voice for them for the last 6 years.
Why do you want to do it? Because I always thought, like, when you're a reporter, you cover someone, you try to put yourself in their shoes, even though you don't planning to go in their shoes. So I always think like Alder would be fun because you can make a difference. You really find out what people think. You get to sit in hearings and ask public officials, elected officials, how they're spending the public's money and make decisions. But you're never home. And people yell at you about the craziest stuff that half the time you can't even fix. And, you got kids there, Brackeen.
That's right.
I've seen your kids.
That's
you got a
right.
beautiful daughter.
Thank you.
So why do you want to do it? You've done it 8 years, right?
Yeah.
6 years. 8 years.
Well, this would be my 6th year running for the 8-year
I thought you
term.
said 2011 was your first.
I lost my first election.
Oh, okay.
So actually, let's talk about the origin story just a bit.
Yeah, the origin story.
Really, let's go all the way back to the good old days of Hill House High School, where I was really inspired by my teacher, Jack Polishin, into really thinking about politics and
civics
history.
Teacher.
That's right.
He recently died.
That's right.
Great guy.
Essentially, godfather to myself.
How do you get you interested? Like, what were you studying?
Man, civics. It was government 101. And to be quite honest, I always stirred the pot politically in the debate during those times. Those conversations about the Iraq War and what positions we should be taking. And
in high school, I never knew enough to have a position.
Yeah, no, I was watching a lot of news at that time. As a millennial, we were really impacted by 9/11. I can remember being in the 8th grade classroom and having that experience kind of take place as I was transitioning to high school. So it was really front of mind. And Jack Polishin, he knew that. He knew he was shepherding a generation through what was a pretty tumultuous time. And he taught me the form of debate. Essentially, how do you take the opposition? How do you take those positions and debate them within a sphere and still be cordial and still...
we could use some of that these days.
Oh my, it really, a core of who I am, it's really about highlighting ethics in politics as well as bringing that type of decorum to the space. And boy, from the national all the way down to the local level, what we can use a little more of right now is a lesson from Jack Polishin about how to stand on both sides of the aisle or stand on both sides of the same aisle and differing opinions, and how to make our government and our city work and our neighborhoods come together. So for me, my passion stems from my high school experience, and Jack Polishin brought us to the infamous close-up trip in Washington, D.C., which I had my first experience of what the nation's capital was about. But not only that, Jack Polishin brought the lens of, hey, look, your ancestors helped build this nation. And knowing that every stone that was laid, in some way, shape, or form, yes, as an African American young man, my family, yes. So while it was by force, we built this nation too, and that you have every right when you get back home to New Haven to figure out the first place that you can serve. And for me, it was the grassroots local level as an Alder.
I was going to ask you about that, Darryl Brackeen. So you talked about how 9/11 got you and others in your generation interested in politics, in government, how you're responding to this tumultuous event. You went to D.C., you took civics, and you came home with the idea that the way to respond is local.
That's right.
Did you have that idea in high school?
Well, no. Just mostly because we started the voter registration drive, which was the first of its kind, really massive at Hill House High School in particular, and it actually began to be a long-standing tradition thereafter. And
were you 18 then, or you were just?
Oh, I was 17. I was able to register at the time, and by the time that voting came around, I was able to actually vote. So it was always grassroots. And for my dad, he was also a union worker, SEIU 1199. So I was really exposed to the impact of unions, progressive politics, and then the culminating experience in my learning educationally. I went on through the guidance of Jack Polish into Fairfield University, where I studied politics and history as a double major. I came back home to New Haven to teach social studies as an itinerant teacher, in particular at Lincoln Bassett School and Micro Society, where I began to cultivate an understanding and how to connect our younger generation to civics and the political world. And it was only natural that at the moment that I felt like it was time to step up to the plate and serve the neighborhood that so graciously served me all my life, that I knew I really wanted to start local so I can get a better understanding and a perspective that was rooted and grounded from the nuts and bolts, and making sure that I can make tangible impact, even if it's just for my neighborhood.
All right. And you're listening to Darryl Brackeen Jr. on Dateline New Haven, WNHH FM 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhaven.org. Darryl is running for a fourth term as an Alder from the 26th Ward. Now, the 26th Ward, we call it Upper Westville.
Yes.
Like, we go up Fountain Street. And then does it also include part of Beverly Hills, my favorite named neighborhood in New Haven, which is like Davis Street School over to Whaley, right?
Yes.
But you don't have all of that, right? That's part of that ward, that the most gerrymandered district probably is
Ward 27.
Yeah, and you got a question, Bob McCormick, coming, just as you predicted what it would be about. But you also, so you don't have all of Beverly Hills.
No, so actually, technically, Beverly Hills turns into the Amity neighborhood. So I actually represent all the way up to the city line of Amity, up to Woodbridge Social, the Stop and Shop Plaza, A1 Toyota.
You do have all that.
And it goes as far as the Yale Athletics fields into West Haven.
So but wait a second, but remember when they had that new restaurant at the old Brugger Bagels and Richard Furlow was the Alder?
So all of the Whaley Avenue corridor is in Ward 27 for the most part.
So then is it resumed when it's Amity Road to be yours?
Sure.
One side but not the other,
by
maybe?
A1 Toyota and
but not the car wash.
Not the car wash.
So your car is going to stay dirty while you're on your rounds, but you're gonna be able to get a tune-up at A1.
Hey, that's right. That's right. Keep it local. Keep it local.
But then you got the Yale Golf Course, right? Yes. So you have a few squirrels and you got like golf balls that can vote for you there.
Yeah.
And then it skips over to like 7 inches of the boulevard, right?
So actually,
you leapfrog over Ward 25.
Actually, it goes right through it. All of the Yale athletic fields. I represent the fields and the trees. Often I kind of found it funny.
But not the people who abut it. That's Ward 25.
They are all. So maybe half of Cleveland Road.
You do have half of Cleveland Road.
Half of Cleveland Road.
Now that's crazy, Darryl. Because the neighborhood has an identity.
Gerrymandering.
Yeah, Westville Flats has Ward 25 except for the last 7 people across the street from the rest.
Makes no sense.
But then you go up the boulevard.
That's right. All the way down to Norton Street.
Norton Street?
Yeah.
So you've already leapfrogged parts of Taisha Walker in 23. You got part of 24 of Ed Hamilton. You got part of 25 Adam Marchand. You've skipped, you passed the squirrels over all those woods and trees. Why?
Well, gerrymandering. Essentially, historically, Ward 26 actually used to go down to Winthrop Avenue, and it had portions of George Street and Derby. Right. So in this last revision of the maps, they've tried to, break it up into 23, 24, and 25 respectively. But of course, that's all based on population. And what we're finding is the population is moving to the east side of the city,
Right.
leaving Westville in theory. But that's why the census is so important, because on the ground, it feels like, every house is filled for sure. So we might need to be rethinking these.
But meanwhile, that's how you explain that part of it. But in the other part, Ward 27, which starts at Beaver Hills, has the car wash.
That's right.
And the Bruger Bagels.
Yep.
So you could have a contiguous bunch of land, even with the eastward flow of people. I'm getting too in the weeds. Bob McCormick says, does Darryl think that the Alders can work along with Justin Elicker? Now, there's assumption in that Justin Elicker is the next member. Thanks for the question, Bob. Next mayor. He won the primary, but I'm getting rumblings that Toni Harp is not taking her name off the ballot, at least, and maybe running a campaign in the general.
And it's certainly her right to do so.
Yeah.
So I'll just speak for me. I'm not in leadership of the board. Actually, I sit in a very unique seat, representing one of the most diverse neighborhoods.
Yeah, you do.
And I vote independently quite often based on that diversity. But for me, I was a supporter of Justin Elicker this go round, knowing that the impact of my neighborhood and my community that I represent, they were looking for this change. This Alder will be cooperating, as I have in the last 6 years, to ensure that my neighborhood and my community get the resources that they're looking for.
We'll see who turns out today. If you're listening live, it's Monday. If you're listening later, it's already taken place. There's Monday afternoon, 6 o'clock evening. There's a Justin Elicker campaign kickoff. We'll see who shows up. I'm hearing vibes that a lot of people who worked for Toni Harp are going to be open to working with him. Have talked about that. Bobby Proto, the head of Unite Here, which really has the most influence on the board, said that he's excited about Justin Elicker. So,
well, certainly, it's in the best interest of the city to work together. Look, the city's way too small to have such great divisions and divides, and that's what primaries are for. They're for getting the issues that need to be highlighted and addressed on the table. And whoever's operation takes the day, they take the day. And for us here in New Haven, having this great large democratic plurality, it's very important that we get on the same page and very quickly, as the 2020 elections are approaching, and census, and a great many of other issues that we're facing.
All right, Darryl Brackeen, Alder Ward 26. So some of the main issues. Can we talk first about ward issues and then citywide issues, although they overlap a lot? Jaywan Carter says, Hill House 06. Thanks for listening,
06.
All right. Make me feel old, Darryl. Traffic calming, isn't that a big issue in your ward?
Oh, yes.
So tell me about that, what you've been involved in and how it's going.
So, as I said earlier, 6 years ago, I made it my own personal mandate to take a comprehensive survey on data, essentially, to figure out what the top issues for our neighborhood was. And traffic calming and infrastructural issues come to the top of the list on a constant basis. And I'm actually thankful that you've had our board leadership here several times to explain the resource allocation committee.
Right. And that's just a long bureaucratic way of saying that they divide up who gets what in a more open way, where everyone gets to weigh in, so that you don't always think, even though people always will, that some insiders got something for their neighbor more. They look at who really needs it and they divide.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I can actually.
Pretty cool.
I can safely say that it's actually a transparent process. One that does become tough because you could have had a complaint from 3 years ago, and as for me and my office, we're very responsive. We place the tickets on C-Clicks We ask the neighbors to vote. We submit it to the respective departments, and we still won't see movement. That street will stay on the list of priorities for myself until it becomes a priority for that resource allocation committee that votes on it. So, yes, it is tough being in a role that, you pretty much get a $2,000 stipend for, and a full-time job, family, and being held accountable for things that I've personally reported and placed in the proper manner. But the responsiveness hasn't been so quick.
So what's happened and what hasn't happened?
Well, out of the 50 streets that are in my neighborhood, I can actually say that we've seen a lot of curbing and sidewalks and speed humps installations to address speeding and trafficking in that way. We've actually had a great cooperation with the police department in recent days, thanks to my colleagues Alder Marchand and Alder Furlow in their recent series surrounding crime as well as speeding. We've seen a lot of
So you got speed humps in.
many.
Where?
Well, most of which are in Beverly Hills. We're trying to.
Oh yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah, actually, a great part of Beverly Hills in particular, and Upper Westville, as far as Fountain Terrace onward. There are a series of approvals that have happened, but of course, we won't see that come into fruition until over the next year or two.
So you've gotten them in Beverly Hills and Fountain Terrace, and other approvals are in the pipeline. You've gotten speed humps. You've gotten new curbs.
That's right.
What does it mean, new curbs? They go wider in so that into the road so you don't go as fast?
Well, for us in Upper Westville, it's about a degrading of the soil and the cement. Most people forget that Upper Westville and its history, it was built in the 1950s.
There was like a pond or river there,
Oh,
right?
don't get me started about the sinking houses.
Yeah.
That
but also
still
people
exists.
used to ice skate.
That's right. In Beaver Hills and Amity section. So entire neighborhood was built on essentially a series of lakes and ponds. And now we're beginning to pay for it. And over the next 50 years, we're going to really have some serious issues down the line if we don't address them, which is why in my first year, I championed a lot of climate change and environmental policy and resurrecting the Environmental Advisory Council and so on, because as I refer to myself, as the alder of the trees and the lakes and the ponds and the rivers, our infrastructure is something that really needs to be paid attention to.
So specifically, what does that mean for your ward?
Well, specifically is the replacement of the infrastructure. So what we'll find now is an entire series of gas lines being installed due to the demand of trying to change over to cheaper and cleaner solutions.
So replacing curbs, reinstalling gas lines. What else is happening because of being the trees?
Well, there's an entire issue about the trees in terms of a lot of trees are becoming sick. Over the next few years, we've been seeing this trend.
But both ways, people get upset. They don't like to see the nice old trees for understandable reasons taken down. But other times, they present a real hazard, so you want to make sure they're taken down. I've seen that in your ward, where it like fell and almost hit an old woman in the middle of the night.
That's right. That's right.
So tell me more about this. The trees. What do you want to see happen with the trees?
Yeah, actually, you refer to a really important case that happened a few years ago. The trees literally have shut down the streets.
Yeah.
I mean, and hearing these calls in the middle of the night, and this upcoming winter, many winters are probably of great concern for many alders due to plowing and so on. But more importantly, the beautiful canopy of the trees. These trees are hundreds of years old. But there's a strong need to address trimming and ensuring that if we're going to take down trees, we need to replant them. So thanks to our friends at the Urban Resource Initiative, they've been really great partners.
And you've worked with them?
Absolutely. Actually, a founding member of the Upper Westville Community Park, which essentially addressed a street corner that used to have a high traffic of crime and issues.
That's right near your house, right?
That's right. That's right. I was a part of that founding committee, and Urban Resource Initiative has been a great partner over the years in terms of requesting free trees. They're available, whether that's on the tree belt or you're trying to organize your community. That has been a tool of great organizing and knitting of our
and what about
community.
Airbnb? That was an issue at one point. People didn't always like what people make it a permanent Airbnb out of a house again in Beverly Hills.
Yeah, no, it's still a thing. I actually, whenever that issue came up a few years ago, I presented that piece of legislation. It's still sitting in committee as far as I know. But of course,
what would it do? Regulate Airbnb?
Well, actually, it just opens up the conversation, because I don't think there's actually been a comprehensive conversation about the new sector of this new economy, specifically around the sharing economy being had in the city just yet. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. It's still on the books. I'm the lead sponsor on that. And yes, it's still an up and coming issue, but it could also be an opportunity for members of the community that are affected by the finances and the increase in taxes in particular.
All right. Talking about taxes citywide, we're talking to Darryl, Brackeen, Alder. Oh, we had some stuff here. Okay. Andrew Downer says, yes, we had one tree catch fire twice. The trees need to be trimmed and planted, not in the way of primary and backup electrical feeds.
That's right.
Very nice. Thank you, Andrea. Bob McCormick, Westville is one of the nicest parts of New Haven. Grew up there in the 60s and early 70s. Jay Juan Carter, Environmental Advisory Council. Please speak on it so they can hear you.
Sure.
We have something called Environmental Advisory Council. It draws up a lot of legislations, like whether we should do a plastic bag ban like Hamden's. And a lot of it does become law or gets in the hopper?
Well, the truth and the fact of the matter is, it was through my initial legislation under the Obama administration concerning the Clean Air Act that I included the resurrection of this commission. It actually had went defunct for many years. So I think that's what Jaywan might be referring to.
So you helped get it resurrected.
That's right.
Okay. And so now, what about citywide? You mentioned taxes. How's that affecting your people, and what could be done about it? Because it's always everyone dislikes having taxes. They're high relative to other parts of the country where they don't have property tax dependence like Connecticut. But it's also, you got to say what you're going to cut if you don't want the taxes, and we've cut a lot.
Right. So actually, let me just put on the table, despite the reporting, and there's some great reporting and papers, but I actually voted no on the 11% tax increase. So I'm going to take a few steps back and talk about.
How would you have made up that money?
Well, actually, glad you asked. Over the last 6 years, I proposed a series of amendments called the Brackeen amendments. You can find those at the Board of Alder's office on the second floor that actually looked very specifically at departments and contractual services to try to find those savings. That's a
lot of savings. Like, what would be an example of something you'd cut?
Well, I don't want to give specifics at this point, but things that I have looked at in the past, and actually that has set the precedent over the last 4 years, is the $1.5 million sustaining the Board of Education budget in particular. That cut what has been sustained for the last 4 years. Based on what's been happening in terms of the finances of the Board of Education. We really want to see what the plans were, and they are actually greatly developing those plans. I'm glad to see them so that we can relook at that $1.5 million.
So you're saying the city should not be sending $1.5 million to the Board of Ed?
Well, no. What I am saying is we should be able to see what comprehensive plans they're coming up with in order to address the deficits that are currently there, so that it can be justified. And I think for the last 5 years or so, there has been a hesitance about that conversation.
Now, Boss has talked to Darryl about crime. I guess shootings are up. Is crime big issue in your neighborhood?
The type of crime that we're facing are actually like burglaries, break-ins and cars, and not too many houses these days, but over the last 6 years in reviewing my term, house burglaries and car break-ins have been an issue, and speeding, of course.
And speeding. All right. And then public schools, any thoughts besides budget stuff?
Yeah, well, it's important that we are protecting our children, and as a public school educator, as someone that was publicly educated within these New Haven public schools, it's a huge priority of mine. But as my role in the Alder department, we are to oversee the budgeting portion of the Board of Education, and it's greatly important that we are providing those resources and opportunities for all of our kids.
Alex Taubas says, not giving specifics on what should be cut is irresponsible. It's shifting responsibility, not taking responsibility.
That's a good question. And, I have to say this in full context. I am one of 30 alders. And in particular, clearly I'm here to speak for myself. So I have a consistent track record of introducing amendments, proposing legislation, as it is my job to do so. And I have to get it through a process, a very comprehensive process.
I mean, you can have them, like, for instance, could we combine economic development and LCI and have one director? Could we go and have building department take over inspection and economic and take the development part? Could we order every department had to draw up a 15% cut to their budget in the discretionary spending, the stuff that's not covered by union contracts? Is any of that realistic? Are there parts of government we could say we're just not going to do anymore?
Well, while those are all great ideas to think about and to mull over, my role as an alder is to look at the overall budget that's proposed from the administration. Those are things that really need to be posed to the executive, as they have.
So they propose, you dispose.
That's right.
Darryl, Brackeen, we don't have much time left, but you're on great breakdown on what a comprehensive plan to curb address deficit of Board of Education. Social media, you one of the early pioneers, I guess, because you're a millennial. When there were big storms, you're out there Facebook living like Mayor Kurt Lang in Hamden, showing people what's happening right out on the street. You talked about you do an annual survey. How are you using social media? How has that changed in the years you've been on?
That's right. Actually, again, the Independent, you highlighted many years ago, my launching.
You were first out of the box.
That's right. It was fun. It was through the video. It was great. It was great testing. Of course, I lost that. So that first race, but in measuring the use of technology, social media, and the importance of it in particular in our local communities, I found it to be absolutely vital. And I actually found that residents are very dependent on that type of engagement because everyone's not able to come to every hearing. Everyone's not able to see
So
what's actually happening on the
how
ground.
often do you use Facebook Live?
And I only typically pick that up in the winter months. Over the years, I've learned that that those are probably the most crucial moments that people really want to know what's happening because they're in their homes and so on.
So do you still do it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And actually, I found email to be my friend, and giving updates and newsletters on a frequent basis as well.
All right, and I'm going to let you go in a minute. Your day job is YMCA of Hamden or New Haven?
Actually, yep. I serve as the district executive director of the New Haven YMCA Youth Center, which is on 50 Howe Street, and also I serve as the district executive director of the Hamden North Haven YMCA.
Okay, and so how's that going?
Oh, it's going well. Multi-million-dollar organization, and really just reviving the reputation of the New Haven YMCA in particular. We are here and we serve over hundreds of kids in the Dwight West River neighborhoods, and we really want to be a cornerstone in this community again.
Nate Darrison says, great job. Keep driving positive change, capital P, like that. Andrew Downer, I commend you, Darryl, for supporting Justin. There are Democratic alders who will be supporting an unaffiliated candidate. And just finally, your next priority, if reelected.
That's right. No, is to continue to serve and be a mouthpiece for my neighborhood, and to ensure those priorities are delivered, and to make sure that our community is becoming united one once again.
All right. Darryl, I love that about your neighborhood. I think people do cross what are traditional barriers in our society, work together, Ward 26. They hash it out.
That's right.
And they come together.
That's right.
I'm thinking of the Yetis that started. Rodney Williams is watching too.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So anyway, I want to thank Darryl Brackeen, our guest in WNHH. Thank Gateway Community College and Bertram Moses PC. We're not done yet, folks. We're taking a little break. You're listening to the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from their CD, A Plea for Peace. And you're going to hear the real thing in person in 5 minutes. David Chevin, co-founder and bassist for that group and many ensembles, is going to have a seasonal visit. We love to check in with them when the days of awe are approaching, and we're digging deep in our souls for salvation and the will to and the ability to live another year and do right in our world. So sit tight, folks. We're going to take a little break. We'll be back with David Chevin. Thanks to the man behind the patrols, Harry Jones, and thanks to Darryl Brackeen Jr. I hope you come back.
Thank you so much, Paul.
All right. Thank you.